And solo here. All right, thank you all for joining us and welcome to the September 2023 Policy Forum. And for any of you that are new to the call, my name is Jen Wisdahl. I am the COO of FASD United, and I also work on my first love policy, along with my partner in crime, Susan Shepard Carlson, and Chris Melfi from our office, who couldn't be here today. He is unfortunately sick, not COVID, but sick.
Dexter.
All right. So I'm going to introduce Tom Donaldson to maybe share a few words about things that are going on within the organization.
Hey, Jen. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. There, I see Julia, see Annette. Saw you all last week and others. So that was fantastic. Boy, what a week of activities. We're so excited. But this day and age, there's more to come. There's a lot more to do. So we don't have that much time to reflect. But perhaps the biggest activity last week was Hill Day, a congressional briefing. So there's a lot happening with the Respect Act, and to make sense of it all, we have Jen and Susan. And as I always say, and I'm here to sit in so that I can understand what's happening as well, what we need to be doing. So welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Tom. And
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
Oh, I was just gonna echo the big thank you. It was an incredible week, and there were highlights every day. For those that came out and participated in some or all, it was just well done. And I heard lots of in our meetings. I heard lots of good comments from members of, or the staff of members of Congress on how impactful what we're doing is. So thank you.
With that being said, we still do have a few more days in FASD Awareness Month, and we've got some great resources that were put together this year for celebrating that. You can download all of them. They're all shared online under our FASD Awareness Month tab on the website. And really, if you haven't checked them out yet, there's still time in the month to do that. Wanted to also make a brief announcement that the formerly known as the Vancouver Conference, now known as the 9th International Research Conference on Adolescents and Adults with Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders, will be April 11th through 14th, 2024. Really hope to see as many of you there as possible. Highly recommend going on the website and signing up for updates so that you can get the announcement when registration is open. And we expect that to be happening sometime November, December. We'll be releasing the room block at the hotel there around that time as well. They are finalizing or working on finalizing the agenda along with the ALC changemakers. And we'll be doing some calls for abstracts, hopefully here within the next month or so. So everything's coming together. We've got a location. It'll be at the Hyatt in downtown Seattle, and lots of information on the conference on our website. But for those of you who have not attended this before, this is what used to be known as the Big Vancouver Conference. And every other year, they have a full track for adolescents and adults with FASD that they can attend independently, along with the ALC changemakers. It's the Nothing About Us Without Us. So this is their conference. And we're really excited to be hosting that and shaping that going forward in Seattle. So I believe this is last, but certainly not least on the announcements. The Education and FASD survey is still open. Highly encourage you, if you haven't done it yet, or you have not shared this survey with any educational professionals that you know, individuals with FASD, parents, caregivers. There's different sections of this survey. It takes, according to our software, 7 minutes to complete. So it's not a huge lift, but we do ask that you please share that as much as possible. And again, that's available on our website, or the website is listed down below here, or we've got the funny looking QR codes. And help me out in the chat here, somebody. I know last month you could not see the full QR codes because my screen was cutting it off. Can you see them today? Either raise a hand or throw something in the chat and let me know. Liz, I see that. Perfect. We're good to go. Hooray. All right.
Oh, and Jen, I just wanted to say on this is that this survey is going to update the previous one that was done through the affiliate and proof. And we're going to be using it for policy. So it's really, really, really important that you give us that information so we can compile that for our policy work.
Because show of hands, who feels like education and FASD is potentially an issue? Right. So please help with that if you can. All right, so on to the main event. Again, for anybody new joining, the FASD Respect Act 2.0, as we're lovingly calling it, really is meant to build a foundation and bring FASD information into our existing silos of care. So there is a section on building state and tribal systems, which would give states funding to allow them to start bringing FASD into their existing infrastructure. So not creating something big and new in the state, but in areas like justice, child welfare, education, diagnostic capacity, behavioral health, all of those areas could begin looking at where they can fit FASD into that puzzle and how they can do that. Additionally, it would reauthorize and refund, well, we'll get to that part, the Centers for Excellence, which was hugely beneficial in taking what we know from 50 years of research and pushing that out, disseminating that information and putting it into practice. So you've got research, you've got policy that bridges the gap, and then you have practice. And that's what the FASD Respect Act does. So we've made some headway this month. I always like to show the little chart here. We've had a lot of push both by advocates and then also by our champions in the legislature. There has been a lot of conversation happening on the Hill about the FASD Respect Act, and both in committee and with our lead authors. And so things are inching towards where we will have some form of our bill either sent to the out of committee and sent to the floor. And so we're quite excited about that. We are definitely making headway. And Susan, you said something to me earlier about the feedback that you got from our lead authors. Can you share that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they just believe that what you all are doing is having an impact on what's happening in, I always call this the inside-outside game, and you can't do one without the other. And it's having a dramatic impact on what's happening on the inside game. And that, I think, is the key to policy change. And you have to do both. You can, because you've got staff that they work on the inside game, but they and their members are certainly impacted by what they're hearing from their constituents. So again, and we are, I've never seen it with this, in advocacy before with this issue. So it's certainly is, we know the way forward on how to do this. And We just have to keep the, what did we say, Jen? The pedal to the metal, or the metal to
Keep the foot on the gas, keep the pedal to the metal. All right.
Yeah.
So the bill status, while it hasn't updated a ton from the end of August on the outside, on the inside, we've seen a fundamental shift. This is the inside game, outside game. We have seen a lot of movement within committee staff, committee members and their staff, and within our legislative champions, having conversations about how to move the bill forward. We are having those conversations both on the House and the Senate side. So there's been a lot of push on the Senate side because Senator Cassidy did add it into his marker bill for the Support Act. And a lot of push on the House side to figure out a mechanism for getting it through because the Support Act has already gone through. And so, you know, this is all running along really, really nicely. And now we are faced with what some are saying is an inevitable government shutdown. So what that means to us. Obviously, the House and Senate are still working during that time, so we can still advocate, but that means that things are going to get a little bit more contentious. And so the politics of how things are working on both sides is going to be need to be navigated. So I'm going to show you the world's most confusing slide. I showed this last month. We've added a little bit to it so I can explain some of the intel we got when we were up on the Hill, but also just kind of fill you in on where we're at. So anybody who attended Hill Day, we talked about such sums. Such sums is what you put in a bill to indicate that you can get appropriations for this bill. So money can be assigned to this bill. Such sums are necessary is the long title for it, but it doesn't give a dollar amount. So what that means is you pass the bill authorizing, yes, Congress can spend money on this, but when it's passed with such sums are necessary, then you have to go to the appropriators, which you would have to anyway, even if there was money in the bill, and ask them for the money and get the money to go along with the authorization. When there's money in the bill, that gives a dollar figure for the appropriators to hit at when the appropriators are putting together the budget and giving out money. So some legislators really like to have such sums in there because they want the appropriators to be able to do their job. Or in some cases, it's because their party controls appropriations. In other cases, they don't like to have such sums in there. They want to have a dollar figure because they want to see control exactly what's being spent. And maybe their party doesn't control what's going on in appropriations. So what we have now is in the Senate, the folks that are moving our bill do not want to have a dollar figure in there. They want such sums, which is why, and that was a request from our legislators last year. They wanted to put such sums in. Okay, so we put such sums in. What we're seeing now in the House is even though some of them wanted to have such sums in last year because how things are working have changed, now they want to see a dollar figure. And so we're going to have to navigate that. And you see the two trains. The two trains are the House bill and the Senate bill. And it's okay if they are slightly different. As long as they pass the House and they pass the Senate, then they come together in conference, they negotiate what that final bill is going to look like, and then it can go through. But this is just I'm not going to call it a hiccup. It's just part of the landscape that we're navigating right now. And with the shutdown, that's probably going to get a little bit stickier. But I think our House and Senate champions on both sides of the aisle are really committed to getting that put through and navigating this landscape. This is oh, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that I was fortunate to have Representative McCullum on my flight going back to Minnesota. And so, and I know, I did notice that some of our advocates also had opportunities to do a little more lobbying on the, before or on the plane. And I had about a 15-minute conversation about this whole issue. And she frankly was a little surprised about the such sums, and that because we did have numbers in the bill last year, if you recall. It was 118 million, and we won't go into all the details about that. But that was one thing. She also said that the authorization is extremely important, that the appropriators have that. And she said her recommendation, and I haven't been able to, follow up on the Senate side, is to put a low number in there, because then they can, but that was put a low number in, and then the appropriators can, we can adjust that as they go through that process. And the value is to try, that would be to get something that's authorized for next fiscal year, for FY. So we don't have to come back. I mean, we'll obviously come back, because we'll probably want more than what's going to be appropriated, but it'd be nice to have that done. So we've already got something in the base for this. This is, a lot of, this is an art and a science. And so we just have to, and we're making that connection with staff from both sides, where they even haven't had those discussions. So it's been an interesting exercise. So stay tuned.
Yeah. So the hope is that if we can get it past this year, then the appropriate, with some amount of sums in it, then we could potentially get appropriations for fiscal year 2024. But again, it depends on what the next thing to happen in the House and Senate is, and how hard we're pushing. And I know everyone here, myself included, is pushing about as hard as they can, and it is working. Like, this is definitely helping. So before I move on, any questions on any of that? Because that was kind of a lot to take in, and it's a little bit confusing in political speak and policy speak. So if anybody needs a plain language interpretation of that, you probably wouldn't be the only one. So any questions on that so far?
I think people are exhausted from last week.
I am. Could be. All right. So what do we need to do now? We still need to hit critical mass in terms of co-sponsors. The reason why we're starting to get footing in the House and Senate, the reason why people are starting to listen to us, is because we've shown that we have the manpower, the person power, to go out there and talk to our legislators and get them on board with this. We are building political will. So we want to be focusing again on the House E&C Health Subcommittee. We are still focused, and I got a lot of questions about this over the last month. We are still focused and advocating on the FASD Respect Act, not the Support Act. I will absolutely let you know the minute we need to be working on that. But right now, we are focused on the FASD Respect Act. We can say in meetings that Senator Cassidy has included the FASD Respect Act in his marker bill for the Support Act. We can say that. And that will mean something to the House staffer, or to the legislative staffers. Really, this is about building political will and getting our co-sponsors on board. So if your legislator isn't co-sponsoring yet, keep meeting with them. Sometimes my legislator, who Kim Schreier, my congresswoman, she's a pediatrician. She's friends with another pediatrician who's a diagnostician in our state. She co-sponsored the bill last year. It still took me 2 meetings with the legislative aide to cut through all the other noise that they're dealing with in the House and Senate to get her signed on. So don't lose hope. Sometimes you just have to be the squeakiest wheel because there's a lot going on. So wanted to talk a little bit about Hill Day. So we had and this is just a portion of the people who went out for Hill Day. These are the people who made it to the kickoff meeting that weren't already on the Hill. And we had a number of folks already on the Hill. We had folks out and about all throughout DC wearing the Ask Me About FASD t-shirts that says 1 in 20 isn't rare. And that was a really great conversation starters for elevator rides. I know Christy Petrinko is getting a co-sponsor in her state because of the shirt she was wearing.
No, it was Illinois.
Well, then there were two.
It was Illinois.
All right, because Christy got one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christy got one from Illinois, who was a
from
friend of
Illinois. Okay,
Yeah,
friend of Morelli. Yeah. Okay, my mistake. But regardless, the shirts were a hit. So we do have a few extra in the office. If anybody is doing some advocacy, let me know. And we may do another run of shirts if people feel like that would be helpful and useful to them in their advocacy going forward. But we had everything from, we had Virginia, there's outside Mitch McConnell's office, outside Crenshaw's office, outside Schreier's office, meetings with representatives, meetings with aides, meetings with senators, meetings with their aides. We had self-advocates involved in this. And then we did a congressional briefing. We did a briefing of the Bipartisan Task Force on Substance Use and Addiction. Thank you to Representative Trone for setting that up for us. And that was fantastic. We had Christy Petrinko give an FASD 101 to the staffers that attended. We had Sean Patrick Bousquet, I don't know if he's here today or not, but did a phenomenal job of talking about why the FASD Respect Act is needed as a self-advocate. Susan and I talked about the mechanics of the bill, and then Justin Shepard, who was also in town, self-advocate, member of the ALC and filmmaker, he came up and spoke about his experience and why it was important to support the FASD Respect Act. So really exciting day with all of that activity going on. And we had Senator Klobuchar and Representative Trone and Representative McCollum all come in and take part in the Red Shoes Gala as well, just showing their support for FASD, which was pretty stinking cool. So to recap, on the Hill that day, we had 72 advocates. Originally, we had 90 some odd scheduled, but schedules change. That's okay. Representing 21 states, plus people from DC and Canada, which is pretty cool. 60 meetings over 21 states. That was just a lot of legwork that got done in one day. So far, we got 4 new co-sponsors from that. Additionally, the representative from Illinois, Morelli's friend, that Christy Petrinko's got to follow up on, and a verbal commitment from Representative Sessions out of Texas. So I think just a really impactful day. We got a lot of work done. To follow up on that, we have some language that you can use if you want to send a follow-up letter to your legislator that you met with, just thanking them for the meeting, giving them some information, keeping it top of mind. That's also really helpful. So I don't know if it's going to work, and it might not. It is not going to work. I was going to do a poll because one of the things we're talking about is, we've got the Vancouver conference coming up in Seattle. I keep calling it the Vancouver conference. It's in Seattle. And Terry will have that letter available for download with these slides that we'll publish once the meeting's over. So thank you for that question. what we wanted to ask is, you know, we'd like to do a Hill Day next year, but we also know that people's resources are finite. And just wanted to take a moment and kind of open it up to, is is a Hill Day something that you think you might be able to do next year? Do we try and do it virtually instead? You know, what the value of the Hill Day was to you, in your opinion. You know, I think Susan and I are pretty firm on, we need people there and we need boots on the hill, but really wanted to get some opinions from those of you that were there and maybe those of you that weren't able to attend. So if you have any comments on that, you're welcome to either put them in the chat or raise your hand. I'd just love to hear your thoughts.
Also, we're going to be putting together a video of the congressional briefing, and because unfortunately what happened on Thursday, and I don't know how many health staffers were there, but they were supposed to, the members were supposed to leave on Thursday, in the House. But then Speaker McCarthy kept them. And so their staff are, captive when their members in town. So we had a lot signed up, unfortunately, this is stuff you can't predict, folks. And there were a lot that really wanted to be there. So we'll be putting together a video of that. I know that Senator Klobuchar, and this was geared for House staff, although we did have a staff, we had some from the Senate because they didn't have that same issue. But I know Senator Klobuchar's staff was not able to be there, and that's she would love to see the briefing. So that'll be another way we can that you can use that if you weren't able to be there and you want to connect with your health LA. And I just saw a question on those that were sponsors last year and haven't. And this would be a good opportunity for if you're in that situation. The lead sponsors have sent out dear colleagues letters on those, but it really, like I said, this is the inside outside game, folks. So we need, if you're in that situation, it'd be a great time to follow up with them.
And, really appreciate some of the comments here, Jackie, about it being very impactful, people wanting to gather again. But, Terry Tibbet from Alaska, the great state of Alaska, raises a very valid point too, that, if you can't attend Hill Day, or you're unable to attend it in person, you can arrange to have an in-person meeting in your local office. So all of your senators, your 2 senators and your 1 rep, there goes the TikTok dance, they all have offices in district. And you are more than welcome to go meet with their legislative staff in the district, and have a meeting there. If that doesn't work, set up a Zoom meeting. We've been so wildly successful with the Zoom meetings that, that's absolutely a valid form of advocacy. Because, I know there was a time in my life where I don't know that I could have left to go to DC, because we didn't have respite care. We didn't have additional support for my kiddos. And with my husband working, it just wasn't an option. So, I think that's there doesn't have to be the barrier of getting to DC to be able to advocate. And that's the beauty of Zoom. But it was really great to be together with everyone in person. And I'm seeing some great comments there in the chat, and I definitely want to follow up on a lot of those too, because I'm seeing some great information about being there in person, but then also setting it up virtually. I know Danielle Shaw mentioned a methodology that they used in California, And we do actually have that set up here. We gave them the methodology to set that up, the software to do it. And that was a huge amount of legwork on the part of Annette Koonsman and Rachel Singh, getting that piece set up in the state of California, where they would set the meeting and then find constituents to do the meeting. So we've kind of been doing it the opposite way, where we ask the advocates to set the meeting, and then we ask the advocates to set the meeting and then loop us in. But in states where there maybe isn't a huge advocacy base, that's something that we do try and do. Yeah, it's, and I know that was a ton of work to get legislation passed in California, and the folks involved and FASD now just did a phenomenal job with that.
I do think there's a lot of synergy around having a Hill Day. And we're always, if we don't have the Respect Act, we're always going to have a big policy effort. So so maybe it's not a full week. And I've seen some comments about that where
maybe
so
we cut it down a little bit. Yeah. So for those of you that did attend, if you were able to pick up the 2 business cards, these are some self-advocates out of Washington State. They are the younger siblings of Starla from our Stars for Starla program. And if you're not familiar with that, that is any person, anywhere, anytime can nominate a person with FASD, and it can be a self-nomination for that matter, for an award celebrating something that they've done well. And it doesn't matter what it is. And we will send out an award from FASD United to them celebrating that. But Alex and Clara are homeschoolers, and they are learning about government as they're homeschooling. And when I met with them in their representative's office, they were arguing over who got to be senator next and who got to be president next, which is awesome, and became a little obsessed with business cards from their legislators and writing letters to legislators. So we had asked the folks that were in DC that if you were able to grab 2 business cards, not one, because 10-year-old twins of any sort are not as likely to share as you would hope. Grab 2 business cards for them to be able to do their own follow-up. And there's a QR code at the bottom of the page there that links to a talk that they gave to the city of Kent, talking about FASD awareness, and it's pretty phenomenal. So if you did collect business cards and you weren't able to get them back to us, that's the address for FASD United down on the bottom. Please mail those business cards over to Chris so he can get them to Alex and Clara. Or shoot me an email and you can mail them to me and I'll get them over there too, because they're local. So what's happened in September? We got a lot of new co-sponsors. To put this into perspective, we did far more than we did last year in September. September is always going to be a good month for gathering co-sponsors. We did better this legislation session than we did last, and the one before that. So just a lot of good support. And again, that's coming from advocates like you. I know Michael Lawler from New York. We didn't meet with him. That was something that an advocate set up and did on their own. And we'll get ones like that, like Representative Bacon. He signed up on his own without us having a meeting. So I think the more we can build a buzz by talking about FASD with our legislators, the more we're going to get people just signing on. And then we also have, Senator Kramer, who signed on. That Carl, how many years had you been working on Kramer? 3 years. How many meetings?
I lost count after 10. Yeah. Tenacity is the key. I think maybe he's sponsoring it just because he wanted me to stop bothering him. But yeah, I'm going to call him even more now.
Well, and that's the thing with legislative relationships. They are relationships. It's not a transaction where you go, here's my information, please sign off on my bill. Thank you very much, drive through. It doesn't work like that. This is where you get to know the staffers. You get to know the people involved. For example, we're making some headway with a legislative staffer who is on the Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee, because the new chief of staff for that legislator was the former Health LA for a different legislator who co-sponsored the act last time. And we followed that person because we knew the name, right? We followed that person from one state to another. And now we're educating that other legislator on FASD. So it really is about these relationships. Remember the names of the people that you met with. Send them the thank you notes. When you meet with them again, remind them that you've met with them before. And pretty soon they'll be like, oh, you're back again. Excellent. Which is what we want. The more we can build those relationships, the more we can make sustainable change. Because that's the thing with this. Like, once we get the FASD Respect Act passed, and we will get it passed, we're going to need to fight to hang on to the funding. This isn't a one and done situation. So, you know, the funding comes through, the legislation comes through, organizations start working on it. But unless those organizations are willing to fight to maintain the funding, we're going to be back in the same situation in another 5-10 years, because the funding will get stripped away. You have to constantly be working at policy in order to keep the funding there. So it's keeping that foot on the gas at all times and not letting up.
Well, and the beauty of the Respect Act is that what the states do will build on the future. And there may not be a lot of money for states at the beginning, which I would argue is probably a good thing, because you need, and this was my husband's, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And I think states really need to know where they're going, what are the barriers. And if you've read the Respect, you know that states are going to have to be reporting back to members of Congress in 4 years. So I see the first year as that planning year, and then you figure out what are the barriers, what do states needs, and then that provides us more ammunition to go back and say, give them the lay of the land where we're at. It's a kind of a different, I think what members of Congress are not, and staffers aren't as in tune with in this kind of systemic change. But we can't just, and we've said this many times, we can't train ourselves out of this. We've got to systemically change our on federal funding that goes into the states, and states what they do with it. So yeah, this is a journey, not necessarily a destination. I'm full of all sorts of
Yeah, Senator Kramer kept telling me that it was a state issue, and then when I went to the state, they said it was a federal issue, and I mentioned that to Kevin Kramer, and he changed his perspective. So yeah.
Absolutely. So the other thing I would say is, I know that many of you from time to time travel to DC, and thank you, Liz McHugh, for giving me this idea. If you're traveling to DC for something else and you'd like to go meet on the Hill, not to volunteer Tom or Chris, but volunteering Tom and Chris, that they would be happy to attend meetings on the Hill with you if that's something you'd like to do. So it's okay to partner Hill advocacy with something else, and you don't need a Hill day to do it. And folks in our office will always be happy to attend with you. If I'm heading to DC, I usually make that pretty public too. And if that's an opportunity you have to go, then hey, cool. Come along. The more the merrier. We want you there, up on the Hill doing whatever activity that you want to be doing. So, and talking about that, we can't train our way out of this. It really isn't being disparaging to training, because we do need training. We do need information out there. But unless you have the funding to pay for the people to be in the room, pay for the room, pay for their time, you're not going to get the wide scale training and awareness that you want. And so when we say that, that's really what we mean. It's not that training isn't important, it's vitally important. But we can't just train our way out of that unless the people we need in the room are in the room, and then they're prepared to act on that training because they have a mandate to do so. And those mandates typically come in the form of legislation. So when we talk about that,
Yeah.
yeah. And Tom, I just wanted to call your awareness to your Uber review. You get 5 stars for your Hill Day tours, and I would agree with that. So, all right. So, states where we've had meetings with our senators, Washington State actually should now be orange, but we've added a number of states to the map. I want to give a call out to Oregon, to Sil. I don't know if he's made it this time or not, but we have Oregon on the map now, Arkansas on the map now. Things are really growing there. If you were to compare Texas last month versus this month, we've made some major headway in the Senate and in the House too, both in sponsors and meetings. So really happy to see that all coming about. And if you feel like we're missing something on this map, feel free to let me know. We'll get that corrected for next month. But I find it encouraging that we are populating these maps with color as much as possible. Now, if you don't see much of a spot of color in your state, recognize too that in some states, these districts, your congressional districts, are so small compared to the map that you might not be able to pull them out. And if you've met with someone on the Hill and we weren't part of that meeting, we might not know to add it to the map. So this is where you can help us by just letting us know if you've had meetings with your legislators, so we can report back and give everybody an idea of just how much this is growing. People want to be part of a winning team. People want to be part of something that's growing and expanding and moving. So you sharing the activity that you've done helps motivate people in other states to do what they can do in their state. So it's just really helpful to share that information. Wanted to just quickly go over the staffers resources documents. So on the policy site, there is a For Staffers page. You can either send a link directly to that For Staffers page, or better yet, cherry pick what documents you're sending to your legislative aides. After you have a meeting, I always like to follow up with at least 1 document. Usually not more than 2 documents, because they don't have the time to read through them all. So sending them all of them or expecting them to weed through all of them is a bit of a heavy lift. So your homework for this month, if you choose to accept it, is to, again, work on the co-sponsors, but also to go through these documents and see what they are. See what they do, see what they mean, think about how you could use those in a meeting. One of my favorite ones to send after a meeting is the bill incorporated into federal code, because our bill is a reauthorization bill. So what it's doing is it's changing existing code or existing legislative wording to be updated with our new wording. And if you just take our new wording, it doesn't necessarily mean a lot in context, but if it's inserted into the federal code, the staffers really like that because it helps them understand the whole picture. So that's one I really like to send. The state data sheets are all quite good. That's one I definitely like to send. And then the one that's comparing this legislation to legislation the 117th is another good one. The history of program authorizations and funding, that's a good one too, just to contextualize that, you know, there's 11 million at the CDC, there's 1 million at HRSA, 5 million at the Department of Defense, and that's it. You know, it kind of puts things into context. They can see it on a sheet of paper that, hey, there really just isn't much out there for FASD to support people, and really nothing to support people living with FASD. So if all of your staffers have already received these documents, maybe don't assume they've read them all, especially if they came in a big packet, because you know, if you send them all at once, they might have read one of them, they might have browsed one of them. They don't have the time to go through acres and acres of paperwork. You're not going to get to the top of the list that way. So keeping it simple, asking them what they need, and then giving them what they need is a really good way to go. There's a question in the chat about, is this going to be included in an email? Because we don't have email addresses of just the people who've attended this Zoom, sending it out in an email is a little bit challenging. And we do update them regularly. So getting them directly from the website is usually the best place to do it. And that's why all of the staffers' documents are in one place on the website, so you can just download them directly from there. Any other questions on the documents? Thoughts, comments, concerns, changes you'd like to see made? Excellent. My work here is done. All right. Just a reminder that we do still need as many organizations to support the FASD Respect Act as possible. And again, that's on the policy site. These are organizations in your state. So if your foster parents association for your state has not signed on to support the FASD Respect Act yet, why wouldn't they? The national organization has. Reach out to them. If organizations that support people with disabilities haven't signed on, reach out to them. If your pediatrician's office hasn't signed on, reach out to them. If there is a LIND program in your state that is working on FASD, reach out to them. This is a great way to show volume of support and political will behind getting things done on the FASD Respect Act. And then also sharing who's endorsed the bill in your state with your legislators is a really great way to get them on board. So we got this. We're going to do this. We're going to get this done. Happy to stay on and answer any questions any of you may have. But I'm also happy and understand if you'd like to get 10 minutes of your life back. So you are free to move about the country, or you're welcome to sit tight and ask questions. And as always, I'm just really grateful that you were willing to take an hour out of your time and join us. And you know, feel free to reach out with any other questions that you might have. Liz, you've got a question?
Yeah, actually, I have a question not on the Hill Day or anything, but on the survey for the education. Is it just for students that are currently enrolled in K through 12? Okay, because the way the questions are asked, it sounds like it's present. So I just wanted to make sure before I finished for my two that are just, I'm out of the K through 12 world.
Yeah, there's questions in there about post-secondary education as well. Okay. So you're good to go. Okay. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Yeah.
Okay, and then just one other thing. So if we adopted internationally and they were in an orphanage, I connoted that to being in social services or foster care or something in that question. In the because it's not clear that it's U.S. foster care they're asking about.
Right. Any form of child welfare.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good questions. And really appreciate those that are willing to work on that survey. So some takeaways I'm getting from today is we need to order more shirts and let people get them online, because I think the shirts turned out really well. Let's see, Carl, you want to show off your shirt? No? I'll have to see if I can find a good picture of them to share with the group. But it's ask me about FASD. 1 in 20 isn't rare. So just a really good core message, and a good conversation starter. I was going through security on the Hill, and the security guard stopped me and says, "Hey, I gotta ask, what is FASD?" Right? So it's a good conversation starter.
Yeah, in DC at Reagan National, I had a couple of people stop me and ask me about it, and they said, "People really think it's rare." Yes, unfortunately, it's rarely diagnosed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Excellent. Any other questions, comments, concerns, directions, directives?
This is Terry. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
It's just sort of related to the hotel and the receipt for the hotel. I'm hoping that you have something. I don't have any receipt. They didn't send them to me. They probably send them to you.
So yeah, when you booked that initially on our website, Terry, you would have got one, but I saw your email and I'll send you out one as an attachment so you have it today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
No problem. No problem. Just a show of hands, who's thinking of joining us in Seattle for the Seattle conference? Woo! That'll be awesome.
And you'll be able to meet my wife. She's going to come with me.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think Teresa, I've been talking to you online for how many years? And if you're coming to Seattle, I finally get to meet you. I think Teresa and I started talking, 3 years ago, maybe earlier than that?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. Yeah, just really excited to meet up with everybody. Barbara, I noticed you had your hand up. Oh, and I think you're muted. Oh, and Debbie, you're right. I haven't met you in person either. I feel like I've known you for decades.
Definitely. And it's been a good decade.
Yes. And Barbara, I'm going to ask you to unmute because I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay,
You are. Yay.
great. I just wanted to share that Senator Stabenow made an incredible video that opened our conference on the 12th and 13th. And she talked all about the Respect Act and why it was important and how we needed to support it. And, you know, it was good to hear those words coming out of her mouth, because that means that we got the message through to her. and she asked people to write letters from the conference, and they did. And
fantastic.
It was cool. I guess that's all for now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, that's excellent. And, you know, the fact that our legislators are willing to come and speak at our events or send a video and participate in our events, they get a lot of requests. So the fact that they're taking time to do that means that we're cutting through some of the noise and they're able, you know, like we are becoming a priority for them, which is huge. And exciting. We know Senator Moran, up until the very last minute, was supposed to be coming to the gala and made time for a couple of meetings on the Hill with constituents. So yeah, it's been, our champions, I think, are getting really engaged, and that's encouraging. You know, we'll take the wins where we can, definitely. All right. Well, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to stop sharing, turn off the record because inevitably I forget to do that. And